Welcome to this explainer. Grab a seat and maybe a notepad, because today we're having a tough love coaching session. If you've recently stepped into a leadership role, or, you're wondering why your team's phenomenal, grinded out technical work just isn't getting the recognition or the resources it deserves, you are absolutely in the right place. We need to have a very real conversation about why your technical brilliance, literally the very thing that got you promoted in the first place, is currently failing to translate into management success. Our goal today? To bridge that gap completely.
So, why do brilliant managers fail? And look, I'm not talking about managers who slack off or ones who don't know their domain. I am talking about the smartest person in the room, the one who knows the systems inside and out. Why do they step into a leadership review and just completely strike out? This is the ultimate reality check for absolutely anyone crossing the threshold into management.
I've watched this nightmare scenario play out way too many times. The work the manager is presenting is objectively good. The team is grinding. The results are totally real. But within 90 seconds, the room is lost. Half the executives are suddenly checking their phones, and the other half, well, they've mentally moved on to the next agenda item. Months of blood, sweat, and tears from your team are suddenly compressed into this lukewarm, vague impression of, well, I guess they're doing okay.
And that leads us to a pretty harsh truth. In that exact moment of lost attention, the technical brilliance of your team just became invisible. If you, as the manager, cannot communicate your team's work effectively to the people who actually control budgets, headcount, and promotions, that work essentially doesn't exist to the broader organization. The team literally starts to disappear. Okay, let's dive into this. The invisible job, leaving the engine room.
Let's actually diagnose what goes wrong when you transition from an individual contributor to a manager. There's a fundamental shift in the job description that basically nobody warns you about. On the left, we have your old life, the individual contributor. Communication was entirely inward. You talked to peers, tech leads, your immediate boss. You all shared the exact same vocabulary. You could throw around terms like denormalizing a table or cohort drop-off, and everyone instantly knew what you meant. Context was cheap. But look at the right side. As a manager, your communication instantly shifts outward. You are talking to the CEO, maybe a peer in marketing. These are incredibly smart people, for sure, but they do not speak your team's technical dialect. And here is the core paradigm shift of our coaching session today. If you keep speaking the dialect of your team to outside executives, you're going to lose them. Your individual brilliance won't save you here. What will save you, and honestly what will elevate you, is translation. Your fundamental value is no longer being the smartest engineer or analyst. It is being the absolute clearest translator of that specialized work.
Moving right along to you are the interface, dashboard versus engine.
So the crucial point is, to succeed at this, we kind of need to completely reboot your mental model of what a manager actually does. A manager is an interface. Think of yourself as an abstraction layer. Your entire job is to hide the messy, intricate complexity of your team's inner workings and expose something clean, intuitive, and highly useful to the outside organization.
Let's break that down a bit with an analogy. Your team is the engine room. They're the pistons, the gears, the fluid dynamics. They are doing the complex, greasy work down below. You, the manager, are the dashboard. Here's the reality. The CEO does not want to know the engine's combustion ratio. No way. They want to look at the dashboard and instantly know, are we going fast enough? Are there any warning lights flashing? And what action do I need to take right now? If you design your interface well, you build incredible trust. But if you just dump all the raw engine data onto the dashboard, everyone is confused and your requests for resources get denied simply because the case was never clearly made.
Next up, passing the Feynman test, the proof of understanding.
So, how do we actually test if your dashboard is working? Let me introduce you to the ultimate diagnostic tool for effective communication, the Feynman test. It's named after the Nobel-winning physicist Richard Feynman. He basically argued that if you cannot explain a complex concept in plain language to a non-expert, you don't actually understand it yourself. And let me tell you how this plays out in the boardroom. If you can't break down your team's highly technical work in simple, accessible language, the executives listening won't just think you're a bad communicator, they will quietly conclude that you don't really have a firm grip on your own domain.
I really need you to internalize this truth right here. Articulation isn't decoration. It is evidence. Being clear isn't about being a smooth talker or some slick presenter. It is the definitive proof of your professional competence. It literally chips away at your credibility every single time you stand up in a senior forum and fail to make things clear. Which brings us to jargon is just camouflage, the fear of being underestimated.
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive trap I see almost every new manager fall into when they're, desperate to prove their competence in front of senior leadership. You might think saying something like, "We're optimizing the funnel for top of pipeline conversion velocity," makes you sound incredibly smart. But 90% of the time, the seasoned executive is mentally translating that to, "This person is not sure how to say this in normal English." With peers, jargon is a useful shorthand, but with non-experts, jargon is just camouflage. And experienced leaders spot it instantly.
It's this fear of being underestimated that pushes us to use complicated words. But the huge irony here is that simplicity is the actual signal of expertise. When you can take a dense, really complicated idea and render it into a single sentence that absolutely anyone in the room can follow, nobody thinks you are dumbing it down. They think you are entirely, completely in command of the subject.
Let's get into your translation training regimen, building the muscle.
All right, coach's whistle, we've identified the problem. We know the stakes. So how do we actually fix it? How do we build this translation muscle? Well, the best accelerator for this skill is to read good writing, deliberately. Good writing is almost always good thinking made visible. When you read an essay or a book that effortlessly explains something complex without making you feel stupid, stop and dissect it. Look at how they introduce the technical concept. Notice what they actively chose to leave out. The structure that makes a concept readable on a page is the exact same structure that makes a message land perfectly in a management meeting. Let's move to and see how this builds your actual practical pre-meeting checklist. Before your next leadership review, do these 4 things. First, write down the one core sentence you want the listener to remember a week from now and build everything around that. Second, use concrete examples. Third, prune ruthlessly. If a slide or a word isn't earning its place, cut it. And fourth, swap technical terms for simple equivalents. I promise you, your audience will not think less of you. They will think so much more. Let's zoom in on step 2 for a second, using concrete examples. Instead of some abstract manager speak like response times are elevated, which is kind of vague and totally emotionless, use a concrete translation. Say the customer waited 11 minutes for a response. See how much harder that hits? It is instantly understandable to a non-technical executive, and it immediately communicates the urgency of the problem. Finally, the bottom line, your team's survival.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer gravity of your role. It really all comes down to this. You are the ultimate translator between your team's expertise and the outside world. If you get that translation right, your team thrives. They get the budget, they get the headcount, they get the promotions. If you get it wrong, their excellent hard work goes completely invisible. This single skill literally determines their survival and success in the organization.
I want to leave you with a bit of a mirror to hold up to your own experiences. When was the last time you watched a really smart manager completely lose a room they should have absolutely owned? What was it about how they spoke that caused the disconnect? Think about those failures deeply. Learn from them. Because starting tomorrow, you are no longer just the smartest person in the engine room. You are the dashboard. It's time to light it up with clarity. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.